This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Agit Moyed, a really wonderful Shaila to contemplate, is raised by the Aruch in his Bikur Yaakov. We had the great privilege and Sukkos to be at the kever of the Aruch this past summer in Hamburg. And the Aruch and the Bikur Yaakov in the Tosefes Bikurim, he brings in Simon Tafresh Nun Beis the following Shaila. What would the halacha be if somebody picked up a Lulav and Esrog before Alois HaShachar, and so he did the Maisa Lakicha before the Zman, and now it remained in his hands after the Zman? So the question now is, how do you define the mitzvah of taking Lulav and Esrog? Is the mitzvah of taking Lulav and Esrog having it in your hand, and in this case, you had it in your hand at the correct Zman? Or is the mitzvah taking it, and in this case, you did the Maisa Lakicha before the Zman came? This is the Chakira of the Aruch. And the Aruch wants to prove that the mitzvah of taking the Daled Minim is not the act of taking it, but rather it being in your hand. And the proof is, because we know, the halacha states, and it's Gemara in Sukkah Mem Aleph Amud Beis, that someone who gives the lulav to his friend, b'matana amnas lahachzer, you could give it to your friend and he could be yotzei in it. Now, when your friend takes it from you, it's not his yet. So the moment he takes it, so he's koine it now. Fine. So that means when he had it in his hands originally, he had in his hands a lulav and esrog that wasn't his, and then he was koine it. But now that it's his, doesn't he have to do a Maisa Lakicha? He never did an act of taking on a Lulav and Esrog that's his. If the mitzvah is taking it, he never took a Lulav and Esrog that's his. It must be, says the Aruch, merely having the Daled Minim in your hands is the mitzvah, because if the mitzvah was taking it, we would find that when you give your friend a Lulav and Esrog b'matana amanas lahachzer, your friend would have to take it as a kinyan, put it down, and lift it up again as a Maisa Lakicha. But the fact that we don't find that anything more has to be done than taking it, that implies the mitzvah is merely having it in your hands. However, the Aruch says that this is not a raya. Perhaps really, the mitzvah of Daled Minim is taking it. And therefore in that case, if somebody took the Daled Minim before Alois HaShachar, and it continued to be in their hands after Alois HaShachar, you would not be Mekayim the mitzvah. However, why do we not find that when somebody hands over a Lulav and Esrog to their friend, they have to take it for a kinyan, put it down, and then take it again as a Maisa Lakicha? Well, it says, La'arch it's not a raya, because it could be that it is what we call kinyan ulakicha ba'in ke'echad, that the acquisition and the taking happen simultaneously. Really, you do have to do a Maisa Lakicha. But when you take your friend's Lulav and Esrog, as you simultaneously are taking it and acquiring it, that itself is the Maisa Lakicha. But in the case where you took the Lulav and Esrog before Alois HaShachar, the Maisa Lakicha was done before the Zman, and in that case, the Aruch concludes, Nira li shelo yotzei ad sheyanichu v'shuv yagbiu. You would not be yotzei until you put it down and then lift it up. Now, in the Holy Sefer Mikroi Kodesh, written by Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, who, by the way, is the grandfather of the current Rosh Hashiva of Hebron, Rav David Kohen, on the Mikroi Kodesh, you have footnotes from Rav David Kohen's father, Rav Yosef Kohen, a dayan in Yerushalayim. I had the zchus when I was learning in Eretz Yisrael to meet Rabbi Yosef Kohen. So in the Mikroi Kodesh, he brings that Reb Chaim Berlin said, not only if somebody picks up a Daled Minim before Alois HaShachar would the Aruch Paskin La Yatza, but also if you want to be yotzei with the lulav of your friend on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, b'matana amenach zahachzer, it is correct to be mahader, to first pick it up b'hagbah, have in mind not to be yotzei, then put it down and take it a second time, because it could be we do not apply the rule of Gita v'yada ba'in ke'achad. It could be we do not say the concept of that the acquisition and the Maisa Lakicha happen simultaneously. Now in the comments of the Harei Kodesh, or Rabbi Yosef Kohen, he says it could be that the reasoning of Reb Chaim Berlin is because the Shach holds that by matana, we do not say Chatseroi or Matanasai Ba'in Ke'echad. Even though the Nesivos and the Ktsais ask on him, but nevertheless, it is a Chumrah not to rely on the concept of Chatseroi or Matanasai Ba'im Ke'echad. However, Rabbi Yosef Cohen asked a very interesting question on the Aruch LaNer. And that is, even if you do want to say that Lekichasai and the Hagbah and the Lekicha Ba and Ka'achas, it's still somewhat problematic. Because let's think for a moment. The Noid Behuda and the Rashash both write that what does it mean to take a lulav and esrog? Yes, it's an act of taking it, but the act of taking it is accomplished as soon as it's in your hand, even before you actually lift it up, which means that the moment you took it, you did the act of the mitzvah. But the kinyan did not happen until you actually lifted it up. So what's happening is, the act of taking it, the act of putting it in your hand, the act of lekicha, is done before the kinyan. So it's not ba'an ke'echad. The ma'aseh mitzvah is being performed before it's yours. So it should not be effective, because in effect, you've done the act of the mitzvah before you acquired it. Unless, says Rabbi Yosef Cohen, the kinyan here is not kinyan hagbah, but it's kinyan midin yad. And kinyan midin yad works as soon as it's merely in your hand, which kinyan yad works unless it's actually protruding to the sides. So this is some of the Lomdus of the mitzvah of taking the lulav and esrog, which according to the Aruch LaNer, the mitzvah is not to have it in your hand, the mitzvah is to take it, and therefore l'maisa the Aruch LaNer paskins that if you took it before alois hashachar lo yatsa. However, in the case where your friend gives it to you, we apply the rationale of Yadai, Kinyanai, and Kinyanai, Ulekichasai Ba and Ka'achas, wishing everyone a good Moyed and a good Yom Tif, Kol Tov.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.